I gotta make sure I do this right this time. So just to let everybody know, we should be live on YouTube now. Evening, Alana.
Morning or afternoon, whatever time it is.
Hey, we are live on YouTube, just so you know. So just to let everybody know, we should be live on YouTube now. Oh, here we go again. Evening, Alana.
Morning or afternoon.
There we go. I fixed it. So we're just waiting for the mayor to check in. Councillor Baerlich will be a little bit potentially late. He's out on a helicopter for work. And my understanding is Councillor Deputy Mayor McDonald will not be joining us. Oh, here comes. Okay.
Hello.
Sorry, I was having link problems.
Me too. Like I'm only on my cell phone. It's Kurt.
Okay. All right. I see Des and Ray. Gary. Is Clarence on the, oh, there he is. Is Alana on the phone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's here. Paul won't be able to make it, and Steve said he'll probably be late. He's still out doing field work. So I think if we're ready, then we can call to order. So call to order at 7:02 p.m. Was there any changes to the agenda? There was a new agenda sent out earlier today. See none. We'll look for an adoption of the agenda. Moved by Clarence, seconded by Gary. All in favor?
Aye.
Moved, thank you. Declaration of conflict of interest or pecuniary interest. Councillor Wood.
8.2.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor McBride. Same item. Okay, thank you. All right, so right into delegations, presentations, or petitions. We do have the group from the INUVIALUIT and Energy Security Project. I see a crowd of you at one table and Lucy also. Thank you for joining us tonight. I did send out a little paper version of some of the information we're going to receive tonight, but I think I will hand it over to you. I don't know, Kate, are you leading your presentation? All right, I will give it to you guys then.
Thanks so much, Natasha. Good to see everybody. I hope you guys are faring well and starting to enjoy some good weather. Certainly deserve it. So this, first of all, thank you for having us at your meeting today. This presentation can go quite long if we don't keep pace. And seeing the sunshine behind Lucy in the background there, I can appreciate people don't want to stay on their computers all day. So what we'll do, once we do a roundtable here and introduce everybody to you, we'll kind of go do our slides in groups. And then if you have any questions at the end of that group of slides, we'll sort of deal with them at that point. So we just don't get bogged down with an endless slide deck. So without further ado, I'll do a little roundtable here, starting actually with Lucy. If Lucy could unmute herself, and there we go. Okay, go ahead, Lucy.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Lucy Captana, Director of Operations for IRC.
Travis Blasky. Hi, everyone. Great to see you tonight. Good to see you, Mayor Natasha. I'm the president of FERUS's Canadian business.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alan McDonald. I'm reporting to Kate as part of the INUVIALUIT Petroleum Corporation initiative for the project.
Hello, everyone. My name is Blair Lancaster, and I am reporting to Travis with FERUS Natural Gas Fuels, and I look after our business development and all of our external relations, community relations.
First slide.
Good.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and share.
I should have tried this before.
Yeah. 1 second.
Grant.
It's at the bottom, the share screen,
Where is it?
the green.
Green thing.
Oh, right there. Sorry.
Oh.
Grant, can you let me share?
I guess so.
It just says it's disabled.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing. While they're fiddling with that, I will just verbally go through what we're going to cover with the presentation. First, we are going to talk a little bit about the project rationale. This is what every resident in in Inuvik understands inherently.
You should be able to share. Sorry, interrupt, but you should be able to share now.
Okay. There we go. Let us know if you can, once you're able to see the slide deck. Okay, so let's go with that. All right, so we're already on to the second item in our presentation, table of contents. We'll talk a little bit about IPC, why IPC is pursuing this project, a little bit about FERUS Natural Gas Fuels. We'll talk about the project proposal at a very high level, and then we'll get down into the details, some of the elements of the project that you might be interested in knowing. We'll go into some of the regional benefits that we expect would come out of this project, and talk a little bit about next steps and open the floor for a larger discussion for questions that we didn't quite cover when we were going through the slides. So first, the project rationale. Again, this is something that residents of Inuvik are really familiar with. The whole project is for the purpose of addressing the energy security issue that many Northerners face, but particularly Northerners that are at the very end of a long, long road. We see this project as having the potential to greatly reduce dependence on expensive imported fuel, to create opportunities for local businesses, improve the cost of living and doing business in the region, allowing Inuvik to attract business by making it easier to do business in the town. And last but not least, of course, provide a replacement for the Ickhill gas well. We'll go next slide. So this is just drilling down a little bit into, again, what you already know. some of the points on these slides are not necessarily for your consumption, but also for those regulators that are going to be making a decision about this project. So forgive us if you've heard these things before. We'll go through them as quickly as possible. So as you know, Northerners depend on a secure supply of energy, and it's very costly in Inuvik and other communities within the INUVIALUIT settlement region and the Mackenzie Delta. And it makes it really difficult for families to get ahead. It makes it difficult for businesses to get off the ground. I'm sure if energy was more affordable, you would see fewer businesses shuttered, more businesses opened up, and some nice, maybe some more nice cafes and pubs in Inuvik to enjoy. 89% of Inuvik households right now and businesses rely on natural gas for heat. But as this council well knows, the K35 well watered out about a decade ago, and the J35 well has been nearing the end of its life for quite some time. And Inuvik Gas Limited and the ICIL joint venture partners have been doing their best to elongate that lifespan. But we are looking, as you know, at a limited lifespan for that well, and around 2 years left for that, for the J35 well. Next slide, please. The fuel that we do get, that you do get in Inuvik, comes from a long distance away. The commodity price is nothing near the landed cost of natural gas, propane, and diesel that are transported from thousands of kilometers away. The issue is not only the distance, but also the disruptions that can regularly occur along these transportation routes. One being the ferry outages, as you know, as well as just the road conditions along the Dempster, and for things transported by barge, all the various things that can happen with barges, including water levels and mechanical failures and so on. So the INUVIALUIT Energy Security Project really is intended to mitigate these energy security risks and answer the worry and the question and the conundrum presented to us by the ICIL gas well and its limited lifespan. We are also looking at supporting the GNWT's LNG power feasibility study for Tuck that anticipates being able to convert some of those generators to LNG to be able to accept LNG for their power production. Where are we next? Okay, so if there are any questions about those, about the rationale for the project, we'd be happy to hear them at this point.
Just for any counselors who do want to ask questions, I can't see all of your screens right now. So if you do have a question, just go ahead.
I have no questions. I just want to hear more.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for listening so far. So for those of you that aren't all that familiar with the INUVIALUIT corporate group, the IRC is the parent company. And there are several subsidiaries underneath the INUVIALUIT Regional Corporation. One of those is the INUVIALUIT Petroleum Corporation, which is not as well known. It's probably well known to this council because of your knowledge of the Inuvik Gas Limited business and ICIL joint venture. But IPC was created in '85 and later included under the INUVIALUIT final agreement with the principal objective of facilitating engagement of INUVIALUIT as full and meaningful participants in the energy and resources sector. Since the 90s, INUVIALUIT have shifted the focus of IPC away from Alberta toward northern oil and gas opportunities, and has been poised since that time for just this kind of project.
FERUS natural gas fuels, which some of you are familiar and some of you not so familiar with us, but we are a small private company based in Calgary. We're only about 30 people total in our LNG business. And we've been building for the past 9 years, so well, 9 or 10 years since 2010, 2011, liquefied natural gas business in Western and now Northern Canada. We built our plant, which is just outside of Grand Prairie, Alberta, which is where the LNG is currently being trucked from to Inuvik. Built that and commissioned it in 2014. We load the LNG onto our specialized transports, and then we drive the fuel out to our customers, either in oil and gas or remote power generation, who use it as a lower cost and lower carbon fuel alternative to diesel. Since our plant was commissioned in 2014, we have safely delivered 35 million gallons of LNG, and 17 million of those 35 are to customers in Northern Canada. And our two largest customers now are Yukon Energy in Whitehorse and NTPC in Inuvik. So we've been spending a lot of time up north over the last, since about 2016. Travis and I and a couple of our colleagues have been in Inuvik 5 or 6 times, and obviously want to, well, will be growing that number a lot, and really wish that we were there in person having this meeting with you, and wish we had been there last week for the Arctic Development Expo. But the North, needless to say, has become FERUS's most important market. We've been working with the IPC for a while on this, and really have come to understand the importance of this project to the region. We're super committed to it and really honored to be a part of it.
So are there any questions about IPC or FERUS? Okay, we'll keep trucking along then.
Yep.
Oh,
No, I just said no, thank you. It's a great presentation so far. Thank you.
oh, thanks, Des. Thanks for the props.
I'm going to write that down as a note.
So here is the really high level proposal. It's no secret that INUVIALUIT have been looking at the Tuck M18 well for quite some time. That name is the technical legal name that's given to the well by the Canada Energy Regulator, in case you're curious about where that comes from. But the proposal is to develop it and transport LNG from it with the technical support of FERUS natural gas fuels. So the project would involve the construction of an access road, a pad to support the facility, the completion of the existing well, the construction of that small gas plant that would then convert that natural gas into liquid natural gas. Very simply, the liquid natural gas would then be trucked from the well back out that access road along the Inuvik Tuck Highway to customers for both power and heat. And you see the map on the side, on the right-hand side there, unless, I hope it's not mirrored on your screens, but anyway, the only map on screen. The big circle around, the yellow circle around it is our regional study area. And then there is a little, I think it's a yellow box. It's a little polygon there. That is our local study area. We'll go, Alan's going to share a little bit of information with you about some of the environmental aspects once we, at that local level, once we get there. So now go into the project description and hand it over to
Yeah.
Ferus.
So Kate mentioned a number of these points already. These are kind of how we've broken down the 8 stages of what's being proposed here. The M18 well, obviously just south of the community of Tuck. It's about 4 kilometers off the ITH. So we'll be building an access road, and just the presentation, the way it flows, we're kind of giving the 50,000 foot view here of what these kind of different steps are. And then we have slides on the detail of each one of these steps coming. So please ask questions, but there will be more detail coming in the slide deck with these various components. So we'll build the access road. Once we get in near Tuck M18, we have some maps that show some of the different regions where we would locate the plant, some of the different proposed regions. And we're definitely open to feedback. Obviously, this is just conceptual at this point. Definitely want to hear people's thoughts on what it is we're proposing, because it's very early on in this project still from a design perspective. We would then complete and put the well into production. So right now the well is, it has plugs in it and it's suspended. It's been sitting that way for just about 2 decades. So we'd be bringing it back into production. We would have gas plant modules. We'll describe in a few more slides a lot more detail on what it is we're doing with this gas and what's actually in the gas stream coming off of the well. It's a little bit different than the Akil well for sure. Then everything that from the well would be transported. There's no pipelines being proposed in anything that we're doing here. This is all going to be moved by truck on the ITH. And the life of this asset, the amount of gas that's in the ground at Tuck M18 is probably well over 100 years worth of reserves. But from a design perspective, obviously this is a multi-generational well, and we're trying to design the gas plant and facilities to be able to be there for a very long time is what we're trying to say. So this will be a multi-generational design. Yeah. Is there any questions on kind of the overview, I guess we'll call this? Okay, a little bit more on M18. Some of these units, I don't know if they mean a lot to many people, but it's the billion cubic feet of gas that's in the ground at M18. There's obviously an amount of gas that sits there, and then there's an amount of gas that's estimated that's recoverable. The region, and when we say the region, the first phase of this project is really just contemplating getting natural gas to NTPC and Inuvik. And getting IGL ideally back on a local natural gas source and not using propane from the south anymore. And then we mentioned getting Tuck converted in with their power with NTPC. So that's what's being thought of here in the first stage of this project. There will for sure be other benefits that come from this project into the future, but we have to start somewhere. We have to remain focused on getting this to be a reality, and we didn't want to bite off too much. So we wanted to really stay focused on the 2 communities at the end of the ITH. And I think most of what we've talked about on this slide, I think we've mentioned already briefly. Oh, and just one more thing. There's obviously been a lot of oil and gas development in the region over many decades. But M18 is really the only well that sits, that's easily accessed without having to drill a new well. Most of what exists in the region in the Beaufort Delta has been remediated or cut and capped and would be very difficult to put back into production compared to how M18 is currently set up.
Oh, yes. So a little bit about liquefied natural gas, and we'll just explain it really high level right now, but ultimately what we will plan for in the future when we're able to safely travel up to Inuvik, and as this project progresses, we would like to schedule a series of live demonstrations to show everybody what LNG actually looks like and how it behaves in person. But just theoretically, it is non-toxic, it does not smell, it's non-corrosive. It's colorless, so it looks like very cold water, except there's a vapor that comes off of it, but it's just it looks like a clear fluid. In order to turn natural gas into a liquid, you have to cool it down to minus 162 degrees Celsius, so it's extremely cold. And what makes LNG so great from a storing and transporting perspective is that it takes up 1/600th the volume of regular natural gas molecule. So good energy density to transport large amounts where we need it to go. From an environmental perspective, environmental impact, in addition to the fact that it's a lower GHG emission profile, if LNG spills on water or soil, it immediately dissipates, leaving absolutely no residue. Our safety manager does this demo live, and it's actually on video on our website as well if anybody wants to check it out. But he'll pour LNG onto water, it immediately dissipates, and then once it has, he'll actually pick up the beaker and drink the water to show like there is absolutely no natural gas left in there, and it's safe. We have to keep it at that really cold temperature to keep it in liquid form. So it's transported it's like a giant thermos, a tank that are double walled vessels, low pressure. And as a liquid, it is not flammable. It is only flammable as a vapor, and then the flammability range is very narrow relative to other fuels.
Any questions on kind of the well overview and the properties of LNG?
Does it make you all want to drink? Not drink, I mean drink from the jar.
We will definitely be bringing more of this education to the community. We did a little bit in the community of Inuvik in November.
Yes.
That was. There was some educational sessions we were part of, but definitely need to do more when we're able to.
And we got that feedback from several community members, which was good.
Okay, we're going to drill right down into some details here for a handful of slides. So we'll let Alan lead us off with kind of the civil works and access.
All right, now that Blair has everyone thirsty, I'll start in on the civil works. We're going into a greenfield area. There's currently nothing there except for the wellhead that you saw a picture of earlier, and the sump that was drilled in when the well was drilled in 2002. There has been a lot of environmental study done of this area, though. The seismic studies for Anderson's original seismic work, the drilling sump required a project description and environmental assessment for the drilling program in 2002. And there's been a number of studies of the sump undertaken by Devon and most recently CNRL, including this past March. There was some drilling done at the sump. And so we have quite a bit of information. In addition, IRC and ATCO looked at this study area in 2018 and assessed for bear dens, migratory birds, vegetation, the creek crossings, fishery, etc. We want to have a very robust project description. Our hope is that the regulatory process will go quite smoothly for us so that we don't get delays and schedule that will take us past our schedule. So we want to stay on schedule to produce gas before Egg Hill runs out, and that's our goal. So part of that is to build a road into the site. You can see 3 squares on that map of our proposed locations for the pads. We're working with the geotechnical engineers from Kigiak EVA and INUVIALUIT business to help us decide where the best place is to protect the permafrost and minimize drainage issues. And we're also looking at where's the best place to cross the creek to minimize impact to fisheries. And so we've also are looking at Borough Source 177 for gravel, and we would take that likely through the winter across a big lake that's between, it's actually called Big Lake, between the gravel pit and the site itself, mostly across water for that transport. Based on the studies that have been done to date, we don't see any significant environmental impacts expected from this, partly because we're not going to do any work during migratory bird season. So that eliminates one of the bigger potential impacts. We've also done archaeological and heritage research in this area and haven't found anything. So we're going to take all the knowledge that we've learned from building pads, building roads, from the ITH, etc., to have a robust and sound design that will last, as Travis said, for a number of generations. This is the location where we're looking at taking off from the ITH. We would work with the government of Northwest Territories for this. You can see on the left, the view south looking towards Inuvik. This is about 12 kilometers south of Tuck, this spot. And you can see it's nice, high and dry ground. And then we'll take off here so we can go down to the site from a location that has really good line of sight in both directions. This photo on the right is looking towards Tuck or north. And so it gives you an idea of what we're proposing to do for our takeoff. There are two creeks in the area. We're preferring the one that's more to the west. And it's an example of that is on the right-hand side. These pictures were taken in 2018 during our fisheries studies. We prefer the one on the left because it has less gravel, and the fisheries, the fish like the gravel for spawning, etc. So we're moving towards the area that's less likely for spawning. But in addition, what we found, as you can see, is these creeks are very shallow and they freeze to the bottom in the winter. So there's essentially no impact to fisheries at these locations. The existing sump, you can see the discoloration. It's a different color of vegetation because the reclamation people decided to plant wheatgrass on a sump, which isn't that unusual, but it does make for an interesting combination in an Arctic. You can also see in the lower right on this photograph, I'm not sure if it's obscured by all of our photos or not, but down on the lower right side, if you didn't have, yeah, I don't know if that changes your view or not to move people's pictures around. Can you see the lower right wellhead on that photo? Yeah. Okay, so anyway, that's where the wellhead is, and you can see how close it is to the sump. So we're concerned about a number of things here. We're concerned about degradation of permafrost. We're concerned about, we're no longer concerned about the content of the sump because we drilled into it and we drilled around it, and we know that it's not a contaminant hazard. We are concerned about drainage because these sumps are mounds essentially, and they collect water around them, and the water heats up the permafrost and melts the soil, and eventually you end up with a collapsed sump in a big pond, and we don't want that. So we're also concerned about the integrity of the well, so we don't want to be digging out the sump right next to the well. The current owner of the sump is CNRL, and they're responsible for the final decision on what they're going to do to remediate this sump. Although we are working with them and hoping that they'll make a decision soon, and that will be part of our project description, is how exactly we're going to remediate this area. Our proposal right now is to control the drainage, cover the area, make the permafrost come back, freeze in the sump, and make it part of a bigger pad where the wellhead is. You can also see on this photo to the sort of the upper, well, I guess it's like kind of the center of the photo to the right, it's a little bit greener. That's a little bit higher ground there, and that's our preferred area just to the right of the kind of shrubs in the middle of the photo. That's our preferred spot for the pad because it's up off the polygon, ice-rich area, and it's not going to be as wet and sloppy for our pads and piles.
Maybe I'll just stop for a second. Any questions around kind of ground access, groundworks, stuff like that?
Yes, Clarence here. I'm just wondering, do you have the contractor picked out already to do the work for you on the access highway and building the plant, or is that going to be done by tender?
That'll be done. Thanks for your question, Claire. All opportunities relating to the project will be put out for RFP. It won't be a sort of your typical government tendering process necessarily, but it will be put out for competition.
Okay, I'm sure you're including, I guess, a very significant local labor percentage of the work.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that question as well. As we'll see in a couple of later slides, this project is really being designed around local opportunities, local employment, local benefit.
That's good to hear. I'd hate to see the majority of work going to a southern firm like we've seen in the past.
No, that's certainly not the intention. And between FERUS and IPC and the larger INUVIALUIT corporate group, we are preparing to make sure that that as many benefits as possible are maximized within the region.
Okay, thank you for that.
We'll come to a timing slide later, but the timing of this will be kind of March, April next year.
Okay, we'll keep going if there's no other questions. Please stop us if there is. So a bit more detail on the M18 and how we get it back into production. So it looks like that we can do this with a service rig. This will not be a full-size drilling rig to come back and do this work. So a service rig will come in. It'll obviously install safety devices at surface. It'll re-enter the wellbore. It'll remove the two plugs. I'm just trying to see the diagram here. I don't know if they're both shown in this diagram, but we will drill out both of the cement plugs, which are in the wellbore now, keeping obviously the reservoir at the bottom of the wellbore right now. We'll install production tubing. This will be designed. It does not have production tubing right now. That's actually what's used to flow the gas up out of the well. That'll be designed to protect the permafrost at the top 500 meters of the wellbore. This overall well structure is just about 3,000 meters deep. So this is a fairly deep well structure. The top 500 meters is where we see the permafrost. At the top, we will have a vacuum insulated tubing, and that's to keep the warmth of the well production away from the permafrost and prevent any sort of thawing there. And we will also be using a gel diesel as an insulator on the outside of that tubing. So that's the proposed kind of engineering plan right now for the well completion. Once that's all done, the wellhead's placed back on, and the whole setup is pressure tested. So that's how we get gas back to surface at M18. Any questions on well completion? This is, we have two slides now. I'll quickly look at this one and then I'll go to the next one because it has a bit more detail on what this looks like. But this is zoomed right out. I think everybody's probably figured this out by now, but got the well, the gas comes to surface. Right next to the well, obviously, will be this gas processing facility. This well is a little bit different from McHill in that it has some liquids. And when I say liquids, it has a bit more propane, butane, and what we're calling C5 plus is condensate. It doesn't have anything that's like oil in it. It has no oil products. These are all gas products. It just have more what we would call natural gas liquids coming from the well. So the majority of it is a methane stream, but there is some natural gas liquids. We've drawn this as an orange line on this diagram, and I'll describe our thoughts around the natural gas liquids in a second. But the gas, obviously, once it's been cleaned up, it'll then go to liquefaction, it'll be stored, and then it'll be moved to the various customer sites. I know town of Inuvik, you're very familiar with some of the LNG operations already, seeing how NTPC is already a customer. This one, bit more detail. So it comes up out of the wellhead. That's the natural gas feed. We show that as a purple line. That comes into inlet separation. And that's where we see some of the liquids start to drop out. And you'll see them as the dark line that goes down to condensate. We then have some refrigeration, which takes out some more of the kind of the slightly heavier ends of natural gas. And it'll be a propane-like, we call it C3+, it's propane butane mostly. And that'll go into a separate storage. And then obviously the main gas stream, which we have is green in this diagram, goes through refrigeration, CO2 removal. We take out any sort of water that's left in the gas, and then it goes to LNG. And we just have to take out the little bit of CO2 and water because it goes to such a cold temperature. It wouldn't be able to do that if we didn't remove that. And then it goes to LNG storage and to truck load out. One interesting aspect of this project is around the propane and the condensate. When this has been looked at in previous iterations, a couple of years ago by others and by FERUS last year, the thought process was always try and use as much of these products as we can locally, but we knew that there was going to be excess condensate and possibly kind of propane butane that the region wouldn't be able to use. So we ran what I would call preliminary economics and preliminary kind of design on the basis that some of these products would have to be shipped south, which isn't ideal because there's some value leakage out of the region. But we wanted to make sure that the project would work using that as a basis, and that we feel that the project is still a very strong candidate for reducing energy costs and reducing GHGs in the region. There is a form of this that we're going to be evaluating through FEED engineering, front-end engineering and design, which we're going into right now, where we're actually going to try and turn these liquids and condensate into something that might be more easily used in the region, that's more gasoline-like or diesel-like. And then ideally, all of these products stay local, and we're trying to reduce all energy forms or hydrocarbon energy forms in the region. So that's an iteration. We'll have to share more as we get through engineering, but just making everyone aware that that's something we're contemplating. Just some pictures visually to try and kind of grasp what this might look like. This is an example. This is FERUS's facility in Northern Alberta right now, but this just gives an example of the types of equipment that'll be on site. This is not exactly what M18 will look like, but it'll definitely be similar in nature, where you'll have kind of a main kind of pipe rack down the middle where all the facilities are connected. That's kind of what runs from the top left to the bottom right of the picture. And then you'll have these various kind of components starting top left, moving through the middle of the picture where you have these kind of processing facilities and skids. And then you come down to the storage facilities, and at the bottom right, we have the truck load out. So that's just giving everybody a bit of an idea what this visually looks like. And just one more picture. This is some aerial photographs of the facility that FERUS has in Northern Alberta. This plot plan, lots of people ask just how big is the facility? We feel that this plot plan will be adequate for everything at M18. We'll know more as we get through engineering, but about 250 meters by 250 meters square is about the size of the facility that we'll be kind of encompassing, and that's about 15 acres if you're turning that into kind of a land mass. Just stop for a second if there's questions. All good? So transportation, the thing that has been discussed a few times is obviously, and when FERUS has looked at this in the past as well, we looked at a lot of different ways on how to process the gas and move the gas. Compressed natural gas is an option as well. But the only issue is the energy density that we would get into a trailer. And we've really leaned towards liquid, which is why we're going with a liquefied natural gas proposal, such that we're really going to reduce truck traffic on the ITH as much as we can. We know that road maintenance is going to be very important, and we just want to reduce the number of trucks. So we're going with kind of larger volume vehicles such that we reduce the traffic. And just for everybody's knowledge, we're estimating between 5 and 8 trucks per 24-hour period would be going in and out of the facility. So that's just a rough volume when it comes to hauling the LNG and the natural gas liquids out of the facility. So it'll be LNG trailers, like Blair said, those are like thermos bottles, 2 vessels, and then you'll see more kind of traditional fuel hauling trucks, whether they look like a propane truck or a diesel or gasoline type vehicle. Or just an example photograph. I'm sure lots of people in Inuvik have seen an LNG truck by now with NTPC. Timeline. Alan?
So I talked a little bit earlier about some timeline aspects. We're currently beginning the front end engineering and design work, and that combined with the approvals will help us make a final investment decision. So we're hoping to get through the regulatory process, including submissions to the Environmental Impact Screening Committee, the INUVIALUIT Water Board, the INUVIALUIT Land Administration, the Canadian Energy Regulator, which replaced the NEB with Bill C-69, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, Government of Northwest Territories, and so on. So there's quite a few hoops to jump through, and there's a few opportunities for anti-development types to get involved. And our goal is to have as many people on side with our project in the north as possible, so that that process runs smoothly and it's not really interfered with by that type of scenario. We will be focusing on local contractors, local people. There's some slides coming up about that for training and capacity building. And trying to use local as much as possible. The front-end engineering and design will take place until kind of late summer this year. Our approvals we hope to have by the end of the year so that we can make a final investment decision in early 2021 and start the work in March, April of 2021. The well completion would follow the migratory bird season, so we'll shut down through the summer for construction work, and then we'll complete the well in the fall. And then the modules will be brought up from the south. We're going to prefab all the modules in a fabrication yard specifically designed for building this type of plant. That process minimizes waste. It allows us to do all the safety testing and so on that we need to do before we bring the facilities to the north. And it also allows us the opportunity to train people from the north with the project while we're doing that. Finally, we're hoping for production in the spring of 2022, and then that will be our first gas.
So this is the fun part of the conversation. Some of the stuff we've already gone through. The benefits are all of those things that you know. You as residents get to come to rely on your source of energy. Every time that the ferries are out, you are not left wondering if IGL remembered to top up their propane tanks. In doing that, also reducing the costs, your cost of living and your cost of doing business. We're often excited about the idea of attracting business to the region as well, and the secondary jobs that come out of those businesses coming to town, attracted by all the things that the north offers with the addition of a more affordable source of energy. There are numerous contracting opportunities that will come out of this for INUVIALUIT and northern businesses, good quality employment opportunities. These aren't just labor jobs, although there will be some labor jobs, but all the way up the line. These are types of opportunities that Blair will talk about in a minute, but they're the types of things that when you're going through high school and you're thinking about the courses that you're going to take, you have something to look forward to at the end of that long road of education, something that's local, something you don't have to leave your families to go and do at the end of the day. We are working currently on designing some training capacity building opportunities for local residents. IRC, as Lucy can tell you about has really a really robust program for INUVIALUIT. But that doesn't mean that there isn't training capacity building opportunities for others as well. The other thing we like about this project is that it's leveraging a recent and currently in use investment, being the Inuvik Tuck Highway. And why that's important for this project is that we can demonstrate to public funders that when investment is made in the region, there are businesses and organizations that will leverage those investments to attract even more economic development. And that's exactly what this is doing. Of course, this will be a reduction in GHG emissions. We're cutting out thousands of kilometers of transport when we're bringing on a energy source that has a lower GHG emission profile, as was mentioned earlier in the presentation. Of course, there are rents that come off of the project itself to help support some of the functions of the INUVIALUIT Land Administration. While that might not impact all of you directly, the ILA does perform a large function in the region, throughout the region, and has been chronically underfunded since the very beginning of the IFA. And overall, retaining resource revenues in the region so that money can circulate in Inuvik instead of being paid in Inuvik and draining right down the Dempster Highway as soon as that money is made, as soon as that buck is made. And finally, this last bullet, I always mention that this isn't necessarily for you, but for the regulators out there, providing tax revenues to federal government and GNWT. Good for all. So go to the next slide to talk about it.
So the key opportunities, this is talking all about the employment opportunities that this project will offer. And they really are a mix of short-term employment during construction, contract opportunities for local businesses, both during construction and operation, and then the full-time, long-term, high-quality jobs. We are estimating, and it is an estimate, but somewhere between 15 and 25 full-time jobs that will come out of this project. And those would be around for the plant operators, for the truck drivers for sure, the people that will be transporting the LNG and other fuels between communities from the plant. Potentially full-time jobs on the electrical and instrumentation maintenance and mechanical and millwright maintenance. Those could be full-time jobs, or they could be contract opportunities. That's yet to be determined. Security personnel could also be a full-time job coming out of this. And then in terms of the shorter term employment during construction and the contract opportunities, those would be, again, potentially the electrical instrumentation maintenance, millwright maintenance. Ask Travis what that means. Contract opportunities regarding road maintenance and snow removal, and then the environmental monitoring and wildlife monitoring. And those could be areas too that potentially schools could get involved in, and it could be really cool educational opportunities for the kids in the different communities. And then hospitality and catering. And the idea, and as mentioned by Kate, and really the most important message about this is that all of the benefits related to, or as many of the benefits as possible related to this project really do need to be local. So in as much as possible, all of these jobs will be filled locally, and then we'll only have to go outside of local if the skill set's not there. But speaking of skill set, there will be training, obviously, that will be required for these jobs, like the plant operators and the truck drivers. And the training will be a mix of training happening locally with the local college, and also FERUS personnel traveling up and spending like a meaningful amount of time, 1 or 2 years, sharing their expertise so that people can do the work on their own. And then also potential employees coming down south for training at institutions like NATE or SATE. And all of this if the timeline, well, if we're sticking to our timeline, would start to happen, what do we say, in mid 2021?
Yeah,
The next year, yeah.
Yeah, once the major equipment has been ordered.
that's right.
We would also be doing training for the first responders in the area, obviously really important for them to know how to handle liquefied natural gas and the other fuels that come out of that plant in case there's any kind of incident. And we talked a little bit earlier too about the just education and awareness. So the LNG demos that we'll be doing in the community to help people feel more comfortable with the fuel, educational opportunities for the kids. We'll look as much as we can at co-op and summer student positions. So, and all to say that trying to find as much benefit as possible from an employment, education, training, capacity building perspective as possible for the project. Did I miss anything, team?
No.
But Lucy, did we cover everything from your perspective?
I think it was well covered. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Lucy.
We go out of the, we'll stop sharing so we can see everybody. We didn't have any more slides. We just have discussion.
Thank you very much. I see Steve's joined us now too. So we did, it was a very informative session. I'm not sure if there's any specific questions from council right now. Just put your hand up, Clarence. I see your.
I just have one. Do you have a buy-in from the federal government on this? And I'm thinking in particular of their green initiative. Obviously,
Yes.
obviously it meets all their criteria.
There are a number of aspects of this project that tick a lot of boxes for the federal government and for the territorial government, to be honest. We are working with the relevant ministers' offices right now to kind of fast track those funding opportunities for this. We don't have any clarity right now on the types of things that they'd be willing to fund, but certainly the recent example of the road construction at what is it, Prohibition Creek, that was announced recently down near Norman Wells, are examples that we're bringing back to the federal government to demonstrate, say, hey, we know you're investing in the region. We know that this project meets all kinds of ministerial mandates. It is turnkey. Where's the money? So we're working on that constantly, daily, and making sure that the federal representatives are updated and informed. And I agree with you. This is a perfect project for any government that wants to get on board with.
Just another quick question. Basically, you're building a gas to liquids plant, unless I'm mistaken. Are there not spin-offs from that, for example, producing propanes, butanes, and so on that could probably be in the retail market?
That Clarence, I can, exactly. So it's different from fuel in that it has natural gas liquids.
Clarence,
And
can you just mute your mic, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Go ahead, Travis.
we definitely see that opportunity, Clarence, and we want to make sure that we do the best job of that as possible. So there's propane, butane, and then obviously we said C5 plus. That stream will either kind of stay as two product offerings, which would be okay for the region. The condensate stream is a little bit hard to consume regionally. We'd have to figure out how we might blend that with other fuels to use that. But I think we're more interested in actually trying to possibly turn those into more transportation-like fuels, like a gasoline or a diesel, because we know that that would be much more easily consumed in the region for over-the-road use.
Okay, thank you for that. I realize you don't have all the information yet on costs and so on, but do you have even a ballpark figure of how much this is going to save the average consumer in Inuvik based on the existing price of the synthetic natural gas? You mentioned savings. I'm just wondering how much.
Yes, that's the $70 million question. No. So we're working through the detailed front-end engineering design. And we're getting a much better sense of what the operating costs will be. This question has been asked before, obviously, Clarence and the rest of the council members, and it's something that legitimately all ratepayers are interested to know. The current landed cost of propane in Inuvik is around $29 a gigajoule. What we can tell you is that the LNG that this project proposes to supply is a lot cheaper than that. I wish I could give you the detail, but just know that we're not looking at 1% or 5%. We're looking at 10%.
Tens of percent.
Tens of percent. It's a really difficult question to answer, but we'll know more as we get through the detailed engineering work, and when that information is available, we'll be able to share it.
I'll build a bit on it, Clarence. It's not meant to be a marginal improvement. It's meant to be a meaningful improvement on energy cost, or it won't make sense to do this project. So that's the target, and we started with that in mind even to get to this point. And one more thing, when you look at kind of like the IGL model, I think the savings are a little bit clearer how direct that'll be. But when you're working with NTPC, you just have to understand that there's going to be more layers to that. So when you give a cheaper fuel to NTPC, obviously we'll have to work out through another entity what that's going to look like with them and GNWT.
Thank you for that. I realize it's pretty hard at this point, but I think you gave it your best effort. It's a good thing to finally see a gas field that was discovered, I guess, in the early 80s originally, finally put into use. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Clarence. We are coming up on an hour already, so unless there's any really pressing questions, I think maybe what I would suggest is that we put our further questions into an email, and I will send one off to Kate and the crew, and then we can get those answers back for folks, just so that they can get on with their evenings and we can continue our meeting as well. I do really appreciate the presentation, and I think I can probably speak for everyone to say that it's pretty exciting to see that this project is going to hopefully be moving forward, or at the very least into the next stage of consultation. So thank you very much for the presentation. I'm not sure if you had anything closing that you wanted to add, but this would be your opportunity.
Just to say that if people do have questions, feel free. Lucy's information is on that material that was sent to you. My information is there as well. Please feel free anytime to reach out with questions.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, we can move on to public question period, of which I have not seen any submissions for tonight. So we'll move on to adoption of the minutes. 6.1, the minutes of the May 25th and 27th, 2020 council meeting. I'll look for a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Salatke, seconded by Councillor McBride. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? So moved. On to the action items list. I did have an update on item number 4. I had reached out to the acting manager at the warming shelter, and he did send some response to our questions, which I sent around to council. So if you guys agree, we can mark that item as complete. See some nodding heads. Yes. All right. Were there any further questions or comments on the action items tonight? I'm seeing none. All right, with that, we can move on to new business. 8.1, the appointment of members of the 2020 Municipal Board of Revision. So I think what we're looking for here are 2 counselors to put their names forward to be on the Board of Revision. Yes. Sorry. So were there 2 folks who wanted to volunteer on this item? Councillor McBride, I think.
Quick question here. Is that going to be like a Zoom meeting or how are they going to do it?
SAO Hood?
There will be some, it'll be either teleconference or a Zoom type meeting because the assessors will be staying in Yellowknife to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, if that's the case, I mean, I was on the last Board of Revision, so I don't mind doing it again, but obviously I'm doing it from Alberta. So if that's acceptable and the council agrees to that, and Des was the other one, and we seem to work really well together on this if he wants to do it again.
Great, thanks, Gary.
I'm cool with that if that's okay with council, sure.
All right, I see some nodding heads to that idea.
Unless somebody has a burning desire to do it, they can take my place.
Exactly. In the interest of fairness, if anybody else wants to take it, please, then now's the time.
I'm not seeing a bunch of raised hands, so I'll move forward with the recommendation. Be it resolved that pursuant to the Property Tax Assessment and Taxation Act, Section 3031 CP 10 RSNWT, the Inuvik Town Council hereby appoints Chris Garvin, Verna Firth, Councillor McBride, and Councillor Loreen to the 2020 Municipal Board of Revision at an honorarium of $100 per day and $100 per half day and $150 per full. By Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Salatke. Any further questions or comments on the item? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, thank you. On to 8.2, the appeal hearing for taxi permit revocation for car number 13.
Yeah, I'll be leaving the room now.
Right, thank you, Councillor Wood and Councillor McBride.
I'll be leaving the room. Well, Clarence left room. I guess I'll do the same.
If you wanted to turn your camera off and mute
Turn
yourself
camera
too, that would be fine. Thank you.
Just to inform council that Mr. Abdallah Mohammed is also present with me in the council chambers representing the taxi driver in question.
So do we need to get the recommendation on the floor and then we can discuss the item? Is that correct?
Yes, you make it a motion and then the discussion can be from that. Like I said, Mr. Mohammed is here. Should people have any questions from a taxi driver perspective?
All right, so the recommendation is that Inuvik Town Council hereby reinstates Hester Inuslaruk taxi owner operator permit for the United Taxi car number 13. I'll look for a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Loreen, seconded by Councillor Barlock. Now we'll open it up for discussion. Questions or comments on this item? We do have Fire Chief Hammond and Officer or Matt Hogan on the line. There you are, Matt. If there are any questions for the department.
Can I just clarify that this was held up because of COVID-19? That's why there's been a delay in the transfer of it? Is that correct?
I see Matt shaking his head.
Hi, so I did a timeline council regarding the reason why this was held up. This is a taxi driver that wasn't operating since before Christmas, that was in the process of selling a permit, and she sold her permit, not in consultation with our office. The permit lapsed. There was 84 days by the time we sent out our letter. It was not renewed during the February inspection, and the permit lapsed, so we sent out the letter, and here we are today. The permit was sold to another individual We've never had any contact with that individual, and there was ample amounts of time prior to our COVID situation to have this addressed.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barlow.
So the current status of this is Hester is appealing to have her permit reinstated in order to complete a transaction for sale of the permit to another person. Is that sort of where this all shakes out in the end?
It would appear that the permit, based on the documentation we received, that the permit has been sold. If council decides to reinstate the lapsed permit, I'm sure that the business deal between both parties would continue. However, we, as per the bylaw under section 19.3, we've never vetted this individual to even ensure that he meets the requirements under the bylaw to be a taxi driver.
If I may, Mr. Muhammad would like to say a few words. Might want to come closer because you have to speak into this. If that's okay with council, he has a couple words to say on behalf of the taxi driver.
Can we just hold on one sec?
Yes.
Clarence, if you can hear this, can you mute your screen, please?
Grant should be able to mute all of us
I
as
should be
the main administrator, can he?
Yeah, just let me get over to
I'm
where
getting
you.
the feedback off.
Yes, if Grant can mute all of us.
Okay, so I have everybody muted now but mine.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here to represent Hester and the driver by name Samir Blata. This permit in question, Hester sold it in February 14. And we are in a process of qualifying the driver. And he actually obtained a business loan. He paid for the permit. And when he went to transfer his license was from Ontario, it was downgraded to class 5. So they asked him to do a driver exam, written and a driver. So he did the written, and that's all within the time frame. Then they scheduled the driving test. And within the driving test schedule, there is quite a few of them. So they try to stagger them. And then the chief health officer basically, like the health emergency has been declared. And the driver test, due to social distancing, is being suspended. And I also forwarded, like even the bulletin from the motor vehicle, we've been in contact with them. And they have no idea when do they allow that to be happening. So the driver did all what he can. The reason is not vetted by the town because there is a lot of requirement to meet prior to coming to the town and saying that's what it was. This is lead us to the piece of legislation that has been in this bylaw. And then we've been coming here quite often for the same reason. If this bylaw cannot even acknowledge there is an emergency in all over the country, and we are not under a mandate even to operate or to work, we're doing this on our own risk. I think there is a problem in this piece of legislation, and it has to be looked at seriously, because otherwise it's just wasting time. This is just basically, there is nothing we could do unless the GNWT open. And even if this driver was on the road, he's not under a mandate to work. So I just cannot understand why our bylaw specifically transportation bylaw is not online with the GNWT or a federal government or any emergency issued under that mandate. So for this reason, everything happened above and beyond the control of the driver. And I think it is just, for him, it is a matter of time. The driver is here, his vehicle is ready, everything is ready, he can't get his license. So I don't know if that's enough reason for the permit to be canceled. And I just can't understand why this piece of legislation in the bylaw keep repeating itself every time, and the town is taking permit after another. If you guys feel this business is not viable and we are not doing a good job, might as well take it completely. Because and at the same time you're dealing with driver, I'm gonna be serious with you. They have a real challenge to meet even a hearing that you set up with. And in this transportation bylaw, there is a lot of red tape that most of the drivers that you deal with outside, they don't know how to respond to it. Like some of them, they are not capable of doing what the bylaw is demanding them to do at all the time in terms of written, in terms of information, in terms of a lot of things. They just don't process it that way. So because there is an emergency, I don't think this is revocation should be allowed, and the permit should be instated, and the person should be given a chance to transfer the permit when the GNWT open their office and they could obtain a license. I have nothing further to say.
Thank you, Abdallah. Were there further questions from council? We have.
I can ask about the timeline again at the land here.
Mm-hmm.
We all know, I think this declaration regarding COVID-19 was about March 18th, if I'm remembering correctly. Is that still within the 84-day period?
Yes, it has 45 days after the expiry.
Yeah.
So Grant is still
Yes.
within that period?
I leave that to Mr. Hogan to confirm.
Thank you. So looking at the timeline, there's a couple additions for council that were added to the latest timeline. I received after I received all these documents. February 14th is the date that the permit for Taxi 13 was sold. There was a loan approved by WABDIC on February 18th. On March 18th. So the business agreement occurred on the 14th of February. On March 18th is when the town of Inuvik closed our doors in response to COVID-19. On March 20th is when the government of Northwest Territories motor vehicle issuing offices closed their doors. I've been in contact with DOT to find out when that happened. I can say this is a true date. March 21st is when we closed our territorial borders. So from March 14th, the date of sale, February 14th, the date of sale, to March 20th, when the Department of Motor Vehicles closed, was 36 days. It would be, to my opinion, that 36 days would be an ample amount of time to meet the requirements under the bylaw.
But I believe what Councilor Mero was asking, though, they have 45 days, correct?
That is correct. Section 2.1 of the bylaw, a lapse permit is a period that is greater than 45 days.
Right.
Councillor Salaki, you had a question?
I think part of that was answered by the question that Councillor Mero asked, but also, do we have every piece of correspondence? So from the looks of this, you heard from the driver in February and then not again until the appeal request in June. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the information that council has based on the timeline is our communication with the driver. We talked to her in February about the sale of her permit, as the emails show, and then we had a quiet period until May 19th. Our office sent out the revocation of permit letter after 81 days expired. June 4th is when we had correspondence requesting an appeal for the decision.
Thank you for confirming that.
Steve or Councillor Bartlett?
Thank you. Yeah, there's been a lot of information provided for this, and it's thank you for providing the timeline, Peace Officer Hogan. That was helpful to look at, to kind of sort it all out, because there's bits and pieces of information that have trickled in. I guess the way I see it, and I've been reading this, that the intent to do this transaction was there. Whatever happened in the transfer of the license from Ontario, I guess, to NWT, where it was changed from a class 4 to a class 5, that is an issue beyond our control or the driver's control. I can acknowledge that. I would also suggest that scheduling a driving test will be at the behest of the Department of Transportation as well. That's something, again, timing wise, it's beyond the control. So, and then obviously you introduce all the complications related to the COVID stuff. It's a little bit of an extraordinary time right now. I think our peace officer did exactly what he was supposed to do. And our bylaws are specific about the revocation period. So I think it was entirely appropriate to issue that revocation. At that point, it becomes a discretion of council on whether they want to reverse that. So I think our peace officer acted in good faith according to the bylaws and his instructions in that regard. So now looking at it from the council, we have to decide whether we feel that whether the revocation is warranted or is should it be reversed given the circumstances that we've been made aware of. So in looking at this, again, to everything I've seen that was the information provided by the driver shows an intent to do the purchase, the sale. But again, I think they got caught up in a bit of these extraordinary times to a certain degree, and maybe they could have tried to be a little more active in getting some of the stuff done, but I don't know if anyone quite anticipated exactly where we've ended up at this point in time. So I think at this point, I would probably be inclined to grant the appeal. But again, I'd prefer to do it for a limited period of time. But the issue is we do not know when the situation is going to change with respect to the opening of the DOT office, with respect to the timing of the driving tests and such. So I would suggest to the councillors whether we do want to try to attach, we'll say, a liberal timeline to this to a certain degree where it's not a never-ending extension. But I think we could grant an extension, and if later on we hit that extension and they still have not been able to do it because of processes are not available to them, we could perhaps look at it again at that time. But just to share some of my thoughts, I think, again, I look at it to see intention was there, steps were taken to purchase the license, to do the transfer. It looks like they did try to do the license stuff as well from everything I could see. It's all kind of scattered, but I can agree that they probably did hit some snags in trying to get that done, which may have prevented them from hitting the timeline. I know they're butting up pretty close against it in their 45-day period, but who's to say in those last 6 or 7 days or whatever was left that they may not have been able to squeeze it in there. So I'd be interested in what other councillors say, but that's sort of where my thinking is going at the moment. Again, largely due to the extraordinary circumstances in which we all find ourselves at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else wish to speak to this item? Councillor Loreen?
Here, I would like to thank Councillor Bartlett for summing up what I am thinking, because I really think at this point in history, everything is so far beyond everybody's control that I think we need to have some compassion. And I really appreciate all the work that our bylaw officers have put into this, and yet at the same time, we're just in an unprecedented situation.
Thank you, Alana. Councillor Loreen?
Yeah, this is going to sound like a really bad echo the 3 times now, but I agree. I think we've taken this taxi issue before. We've all said this, where we've thanked, our peace officers for the work they're doing, representing our bylaws, upholding the bylaws. And it comes down to a point of, if they're going to be doing this work, we have to be helping them out on the other end by enforcing these things. But given COVID, given these unprecedented times, it's been said, I think this is the time to give that exemption. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Councillor Solaki or Wainman, did you have anything to add?
I'm sorry, but if the date on the proof of sale had been March 14th, maybe, but the fact it's February 14th, a full month before anything changed, I disagree, and I'm sorry, and it's nothing to do with the business. And from the words that came forward today, they don't work individually. They work for companies that are hopefully there to be able to help them through some of this paperwork and some of these bylaws. And so the conversation that, the communication is difficult or the paperwork is difficult, I mean, I know for a fact that the bylaw officers are quite approachable, and they've worked very hard with many of the taxi operators to get them through some of this. But like I say, seeing nothing from February through until an appeal process in June tells me that they've just let time slide. And yes, there's a pandemic, but the bill of sale date is not March 14th, it's February 14th. So I'm personally on the other side, and I apologize for not going with the rest, but I feel like we have said before, we have dates, we have strict dates, we have set up bylaws, and we are to stick with them. And we've let other people's lapse for not following these rules. And I just don't agree that leaving the timeline because a month after the sale happened, there was a pandemic. I think there was plenty of time to take care of this.
Thank you. And lastly, we have Councillor Wainman. If you'd like to add anything, you are still muted. We will need to get you unmuted in order to vote too. So there we go.
No, I'm good. I'm just listening.
Okay. All right. Unless anyone has anything further, I'll call it to a vote. All in favor?
So I could just be clear on what we're voting for, just to make sure.
Sorry, the recommendation is that Town Council hereby reinstates the taxi owner operator permit for car 13.
I'm in favor.
Yeah. Steve, you're in favor? Or are you waiting to speak? You're in favor?
Yes.
I'm in favor, yes.
In favor. Ray, you are opposed? And Kurt?
In favor.
So that's 4 in favor, 1 opposed. It moves.
Sorry, Your Worship, just with that being said, I would like to reiterate, thank you to Peace Officer Hogan. I think you did exactly what you were supposed to do. And yeah, it's just an odd time, but council stands behind what you did. Thank you. You followed the bylaw appropriately.
And this is an example of why we do have the appeal process as well, so that council can have input if a decision needs to be made. And I will reiterate as well, thank you to Peace Officer Hogan for the hard work that he puts into this and for the amount of information that we were provided to make this decision. Councillor Solaki.
Councillor Barlock did make a very good point. If we are going to pass this, which it now has, a sufficient timeline that makes sense, because otherwise it could go on indefinitely.
Right. Maybe we'll just ask Peace Officer Hogan, what is the, now that it's been reinstated, how does the process move forward at this point, just for clarification?
Thank you. In the past, council has put a timeline on for drivers, part of the reinstatement process. Council has given a set timeline for other drivers that have been in this situation that received their permit back. So it is the discretion of council how they would wish to proceed. Important to point out though, the driver did sell her permit to another individual. That individual does have to, he has to certify under our bylaw, he has to meet all of our requirements. We have never had contact with this individual. So Mr. Abdallah stated that there was an issue with the driver's license class. There are other sections of the bylaw that person would have to meet in order to be successful. So to council's discretion.
Councillor Barlock?
Oh, perhaps we can let Director Hammond.
Yeah. Cindy? Oh, you're muted.
I would also like to add that it is the responsibility of the driver to contact municipal enforcement to find out what other requirements there are. So the purchaser of that permit and Peace Officer Hogan had also informed the seller that there were requirements. So there is some responsibility on that end for that driver to do that in a timely manner, and also find out, again, their responsibility to find out how long it will be from the Ministry of Transportation, how long it will be before that licensing can occur. And that should be part of their correspondence to us to enable us to multitasking here. That's all I have to say is it is the responsibility of the purchaser that they have to do that that part of it.
Thank you. Councillor Barlock?
Thank you for that. That being said, I would like to put forward for council to think about the timeline. I don't want this to last too long. We do understand when this permit is it's been transferred, so the car will not be operating until they essentially meet all the requirements. Or
If I may interject, I just quickly spoke with Mr. Mohammed. He is going to talk to the new person and make arrangements so that an in-person meeting with our municipal enforcement to clarify what needs to be done and what steps that they can be processed now. My understanding is really they have to take the taxi driver test, which I understand could be done now, and it's just then to the point where the only thing left would be the proper licensing from a driver's license perspective.
yeah, so I guess the point I was trying to make is the previous owner of the permit can't operate that taxi under that permit anymore because it has now officially been transferred or sold.
Peace Officer Hogan?
If I may, the permit still belongs to the original driver, Hester. In our eyes, we've never, as per section 19.3 of the Passenger Transportation Bylaw, we haven't, I guess, qualified that driver to hold such permit at this time. So when we're looking at things, it's the requirement of the original driver to put a taxi on the road within this period of time, not the new person in our eyes.
Okay, but
So yeah, sorry, just to follow up on that, but now we are in possession of a bill of sale for that permit. So in my mind, that permit no longer belongs to Hester. It'll belong to a taxi driver who will at this point not be permitted to use that and work at this point until they meet the requirements of the bylaw. Am I misunderstanding that?
There's also
we have a bill of sale proving that the permit's been sold.
Yeah, there is a transfer fee and process that has to be done as well to actually physically or technically transfer the license from the previous owner to the new owner as well. That would have to be completed. That has not been done as of yet either.
Peace Officer Hogan?
If I may, just section 19.3 of the bylaw, if nobody has it in front of them, a person who holds a valid active taxi owner operator permit may make a written application to an inspector to transfer the permit to another qualified person. On finding that the person is qualified to hold such a permit and has paid the required fees, the inspector shall issue the permit. A person whose permit has been revoked or lapsed loses the right to transfer the permit to another person.
Right, but now we make it into a timeline issue because the bill of sale we have was dated from the time when the permit was still valid. So I don't know if that provides any bit of its trickiness to that exact wording. So I don't want to make this complicated, but I just want to understand, if we're going to do this, that we fully understand sort of what happens. And I want to make this decision feeling comfortable that if we could provide an extension for the new taxi operator to get everything in line, in the meantime, it doesn't all of a sudden revert back to the previous owner and allow them to essentially operate, having been granted an extension that we never intended to give to that person. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that on what exactly we end up doing.
Police Officer Hogan, go ahead.
It's to my opinion that it's a civil matter right now between the current owner, which is Hester, the permit, and the owner that she did a business transaction with and sold the permit to. Section 19.3 of our bylaw was not followed originally, or we would not be getting into this area right now. I believe if we are putting conditions on this permit, the conditions should be imposed on Hester, who in our eyes, since 19.3 has not been followed, is the owner of the permit.
Okay, so on my understanding then of what you've read from 19.3 would be that Hester needs to reach out to the MED department to say that she's going to be selling her permit, let them know who that person is, and then you start the vetting process. Is that correct?
That's correct. She would have to contact our office. However, if council, as mentioned previously after the vote, is going to put conditions on this permit, the conditions would have to be imposed on Hester, not the new driver. So it would be conditions that Hester would have to have a taxi in operation within the set period of time, or a proper sale of her permit with a new approved candidate to be operating it.
So the timeline that you're looking for then is for either of that situation to have a usable taxi on the road within whatever timeline is set through this conversation.
That is correct.
Is it too long to anticipate that having them setting it as the August, isn't there inspections in August?
You're correct, Your Worship. Next inspection for renewal is August 31st.
So would that be a conceivable timeline? Would that be too long in your opinion? How are we, or how does council think about that? Should it be a mid-July timeline? What are the thoughts here? Because we're Councillor Barluck and then Councillor Loreen.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the information, Police Officer. That's really useful in thinking about what exactly we want to do. So originally in my mind, I had been thinking of suggesting perhaps even up until September 30th, just given all the uncertainty around it. But I think I started to backtrack on that in my mind and started to think about August as an appropriate time to allow for some of that uncertainty factor, to give the person an opportunity to get everything they need to get done without really knowing at this point in time when they may be able to actually do that. For example, when the Department of Transportation office is going to allow driving tests to start resuming. So I think at this point, with the inspections due at the end of August, I think that probably is the appropriate timeline, I would suggest at this point, for the certification of the new taxi operator. However, understanding what Police Officer Hogan has just said about the permit in the eyes of the municipal enforcement reverting back to the previous permit owner, I would suggest that there's an extension there, maybe until Monday next week, like June 22, in order for them to complete that transaction according to the requirements under the bylaw, if council think that's appropriate, or even up until Friday, we'll say the 19th. However, you know, but I would put a tight timeline around that, and perhaps we can even add in there conditions that the taxi may not operate during that time, if we can do that.
Sorry, and Constable Hogan, you can clarify it more, but one of the key points of all this is that the license cannot be, or the permit cannot be transferred to the new owner until they can show that all the proper documentation, etc., to qualify to own that permit. And one of them is to have the proper driver's license. That person right now is unable to do that. So correct me, Matt, but they wouldn't be able to do it by next week anyways because of the driver's license issue. Is that correct?
That is correct. So section 11.7 of the bylaw, all those conditions outlined there, they need to meet all those conditions. They need to do we have a multiple choice exam that needs to be passed at our office. Insurance, there's a whole whack of stuff that needs to be done. If we're looking at, if I may speak, if a realistic timeline for this is suggesting to council would be giving Hester until August 1st, or whatever the closest business day to that is, to have her taxi on the road by that time. Ideally, hopefully this other driver, the GNWT, opens up the DMV, so the road test could be given. Just would be my suggestion.
Thank you. Councillor Lorraine.
Okay, so isn't this all moot? Haven't we already reinstated haven't we made the motion to reinstate the permit already? Hasn't that already been done? Haven't we made that decision? Can we not just
Yes,
add
but now
stuff
we
on
want to
afterwards?
we pass another motion to put a time restriction on it, essentially to
So after the fact, okay.
get up
okay.
to the thing.
And by my understanding of all this then is you could have, or this has already been an unlawful sale of this permit because it hasn't been approved. So that you could only sell a taxi permit to somebody who's approved, so that like I couldn't just buy one, hold it, even though I couldn't drive, and then pass it to somebody else, or you know what I mean? That's my understanding.
You are correct.
If council would allow, Mr. Mohammed would like to add a couple of words, please, if that's okay, on behalf of the taxi driver.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me speak to this issue again. The issue here is issue of cost. For Hester to go back on the road, that means it's gonna negate the sale and is gonna add up a lot of cost on the other side. You need a vehicle, insurance, registration, and these are highly cost. And to us right now, Hester sold her permit and she received her money, and whatever is happened is not, it doesn't concern her anyway, in any form or shape. And we forward all this documentation here to the town of Inuvik. And for the reason that people putting this claim on the driver, these are all recorded with the GNWT driver license transportation. Like this driver was going back and forth between the GNWT and Ontario, and upgrading the license, degrading the license, take a test and take a driver test until COVID-19 came in, and he had actually it's a scheduled driving license. Brian Wade is the one who's scheduling it with the weigh scale, and they are the one who's stop him. So it's not, and that was being done within the a legal framework for the taxi. The taxi permit cannot lapse unless 45 days after the expiry. So we're talking about 45 days from February, from the end of February. And then the emergency happened in March. So this 45 days wasn't expired whatsoever. So I have no idea what the economy concept of it. Like it is not easy just to satisfy the bylaw by putting $15,000 tomorrow to buy a vehicle and insurance and someone else, and put somebody who sold the permit already in a taxi back and forth. So I assume that we forwarded all the documentation from the person who's new, and the reason that he didn't approach the town because he knows what's the town requirement is, and the key element of that is the driver license. He cannot obtain insurance or a driver abstract, or a driver will come to the town to transfer the permit, or do the town test, or to the RCMB without having a proper license. So it's all in one piece. And the only reason that he's not qualified because he didn't get the test. He used to be an NWT, he had a class 4 license. He went to Ontario, they downgraded. He came to NWT, they downgraded again. And this has just become it's a provincial regulation that we don't have any hand on it. So it's a matter of cost, number one. It doesn't seem feasible to anybody to obtain this, to think about the idea Matt was doing, giving the extension to Hester. We would like to be given the extension until the COVID-19 or the situation happen with GNWT license office to give us a proper test and a license. And I was involved in this transition between Hester and the new driver. And I'm trying the best I can to qualify them, okay, to finish the process. And at the same time, I'm gonna just answer one counselor. The driver, they don't work for the company, and the company shouldn't help them. If you go back into your bylaw, they are self-employed. They're supposed to do what they're supposed to do. It has nothing to do with the company. We're just sitting here like an answering service. That's all what it is. They don't work for us. Thank you so much.
So, Councillor Barlow.
Yeah, I understand the frustration that's being expressed. At the same time, I feel from the town side, our hands are tied to our bylaws. And in this regard, if the requirements for the transfer of the permit have not been met, then according to the town's perspective, in my mind, that permit has not been transferred at this point in time. It's unfortunate it's been caught up in all this stuff, but we have to follow our bylaws. And I think in this case, the permit goes back to Hester according to our bylaw, because there has not been an official transfer of the permit according to the bylaw requirements for the town. So as much as we may want to help Samir with the new job they're trying to get and the work they want to do, I don't think we can. At this point in time, not the way that's being suggested. It has to go through the proper process according to our bylaws. So the driver has to meet the requirements prior to the transfer of the permit. So again, we come back to, well, I'll leave it at that and let others speak for the moment, but that's where I kind of fall on this one.
I'm just gonna let you guys know my computer might die here, so I'll try to get on my phone. But Councillor Loreen, go ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's where we're at right now. As we've talked about the GNWT office, we all know Brian is closed. We know that some offices have shuttered because of COVID, but our bylaw office has not. Our bylaw officer has not, and these bylaws need to be upheld. So unfortunately, it's a situation where, with Samir taking the permit, I'm okay with them waiting, obviously, but I think our bylaw has to be followed here with the proper chain of purchase, I think, but that's already been said.
Okay, thank you. So with all that being said, Councillor Barlock, did you want to make a motion for a timeline to be attached?
Sure. I would make a motion with respect to the granted appeal for Hester's taxi permit reinstatement to give an extension up to, in this case, we'll say July 31st, which is a Friday, in order to get the vehicle back into working condition. And I don't know if that'll be the end of the motion at this point, but I'll just leave it at that for the motion. And I hope that also gives Samir enough time to get what they need in place as well in order to effectively and officially transfer the permit according to the town's requirements. So I'll propose July 31st, which is about 6 weeks.
So that is a motion on the table. I do need to look for a seconder. Do we have a seconder?
Alana, I'll second that.
Thank you, Alana. So the motion on the table is that the reinstated permit to Hester Car 13 be given an extension to July 31st to have everything in order. Both, I guess, as a operating taxi. All right. So if I can call that to a vote then, all in favor?
Aye.
And Councillor Wainman? Sorry, I have in favor Steve, Des, Ray, and Alana. Kurt's muted, but that gives us
I
enough.
I just unmuted him.
Okay.
Yeah, I said yes.
All right, thank you. So the motion moves. Thank you, Peace Officer Hogan and Abdallah, for attending and giving us the extra information. With that, we can move on to 8.4, the Emerging Wisely update from SAO Hood. I'm just going to turn my computer off and see if I can transfer devices. I'll be right back.
Okay, while we're also waiting on that.
Come and use the one upstairs. Sorry to throw that in.
Thank you, Mayor Kulikowski. I know it's been a long night already, so I will keep this as short and sweet, but I spent some time, and I just really want to give council an update on the status of the town operations regarding the Emerging Wisely plan that was issued by the Chief Public Health Officer. Administration has held various meetings. We're continuing our efforts to meet the criteria set out under the territorial plan. With phase 2 now in effect, I will review our various operations in relation to the current situation. First, I'll start off at the town office building. At this time, we continue to be closed with some employees working at home while others continue to report to their office daily. Given the layout of our offices, we can provide a safe working environment allowing for proper distancing as well as additional protection with the high walls between our partitions. We have added a plexiglass divider at the front desk, which will allow us to have interaction with the public in the future. Phase 2 allows the opening of the government buildings to the public with limitations. As you're aware, we're in the process of upgrading the building with new energy efficient windows and doors. The windows portion of the project has been completed except for the ordering of window coverings, which we dearly needed today, but we're still awaiting the installation of the doors. This is scheduled to start tomorrow. From our latest correspondence from the contractor, latest correspondence from a contractor. This is supposed to start tomorrow. I anticipate this will then, given the nature of the construction, will not be opening the office to the public until the door installation is complete. I anticipate this will be the week of July 6th. As for those employees working at home, a decision regarding the return to the office will be made later based upon recommendations from the GNWT. Public access to the municipal enforcement office is already controlled, and any public interactions will be conducted under physical distancing guidelines. If physical distancing cannot be achieved, masks will be worn by both the officer and the patron. We have the office set up such physical distance can be maintained. When in the vehicle, if 2 officers are in there at the same time, masks will be worn and hand sanitizer is available. Interactions with the public or during traffic stops will incorporate physical distancing guidelines, and masks will be worn if this cannot be safely done. As with municipal enforcement, public access to the fire hall is already controlled, and any public interactions will be conducted under physical distancing. In the event that physical distancing cannot be achieved, masks will be worn by both personnel and the patron. When in fire apparatus, masks will be worn if there is more than one apparatus driver. Hand sanitizer is also available. Cleaning will be completed as required. Training will occur outside or in the bays to allow for physical distancing. If not possible, masks will be worn. Cleaning of equipment will occur as required. Next is the library, where the library services manager has been developing procedures and protocols. While libraries across the territory were not technically told to close, all made the decision to do so. A detailed plan has been developed to allow for the reopening. Under the original order, it notes libraries are open on an appointment basis. The Inuvik library operate using varying hours of operation Monday through Saturday, but will remain closed on Sundays. A maximum of 10 persons will be allowed in at any one time. Certain facilities such as washrooms will not be available except in emergency situations. Patrons will be informed of this when they make their appointments. Public computers will be available and cleaned following each use. And finally, a protective guard has been installed at the front desk. The planned library opening is for June 23rd. Moving on to the Midnight Sun Complex. Obviously, first is the fitness center, where we anticipate this, along with the library, to the most anticipated opening since this whole closure period started. Based on the emerging wisely document guidelines, we'll be limiting the facility to 5 patrons at any one time to allow for proper distancing, as some patrons will move around to various types of equipment during their visit. Visitation will be by appointment only at this time. All right, patrons will check in at the front desk and be accompanied to the center at the designated times. We'll monitor the situation and adjust the number of patrons allowed at any one time based on observations. Other precautions will be taken and a cleaning protocol and procedures have been developed. We have been in constant contact with the environmental health officer about all our plans and will continue to do so. Hours of operation have been finalized, and as you are aware, we'll be extending past expiration dates once the facility is open for normal use. As I've noticed in previous meetings, the gym passes will be extended once the final phase is implemented, and we're no longer taking appointments. That's a bit of a repeat, sorry. There will be options for patrons to use their passes should they wish during this time of limited access. Temporary changes to the fee schedule for this and the squash courts will be presented to council at the June 24th council meeting. It's our intention to be operational under the new guidelines June 23rd. Regarding the squash courts, which under phase 2 are allowed to be open, but we are aware of some changes to the GNWT plan regarding the number of participants. The original plan allowed for 2 people on the court, but this was, we understand, is being reduced to 1. We will also operate the courts by appointment only at this time and to enable enhanced cleaning between uses. Again, our anticipated opening is June 23rd. With the cancellation of events in the MSC this summer, we're looking at moving the drop zone into the arena and having staff supervising the facility. As with all other operations in the plan, we will be limiting the number of participants. As a result, again, this will be a by appointment basis with certain hours set aside. At this time, we'll be looking at afternoons and evenings. We're also looking at playground activities for the summer, although nothing specific has been developed at this time. Regarding playgrounds, we have received approval for our plans by Public Health. We have already started our annual cleanup playgrounds and they are inspected every day for safety issues. The approved protocols and procedures only enhance these procedures. Currently, the playgrounds are open and we are in the process of putting up proper signage to reinforce proper protocols, such as hand washing before and after attending the playground. The play zone will remain closed to rentals until at least phase 3, if not later. We'll be in contact with Public Health regarding about this part of the facility, as it stands now, we do not anticipate it opening anytime soon. Under the current plan, sports such as hockey and curling are not allowed until all final measures are lifted. We do anticipate this may be changed should there be protocols and developments that come from the various sport authorities that would be approved by the Public Health Officer. As a result, we will not be putting in the ice until we receive further information. The last facility at the MSC is the pool. We'd been waiting for more detailed information regarding pool operations, which came out now in the Emerging Wisely plan. We now have had internal discussion regarding the operations, and based on the best information we have, the earliest the pool could open would be in early September. From those discussions, we have made the decision to drain the pool and make some repairs, as facilities like this can always have improvements, and certainly ours can. I'll have more about the pool a bit later. The Economic Development Tourism has been working hard to develop activities throughout the town, as many of you have seen some advertising out there. So they're also staying within the parameters of the public health order. Obviously, the major item is the Arctic market. This has been a difficult challenge, but through a lot of work by Jackie's department, we've developed an event that allows for local artisans to show off their talents even under these challenging times. The department will also be issuing a document outlining other activities scheduled for the summer. Water and sewer operation have continued to work under normal conditions with the exception of enhanced protocols about distancing, etc. Where one of the biggest impact that this situation has caused is from a financial resource perspective. The situation will have a definite impact on our 2020 budget, not only for this year, but for years to come. Administration is working on the effects and a revised budget will be presented to council in July. To date, the town has been able to retain all its permanent full-time staff. As we gradually emerge from the order, we will see our casual employees come back on board, but with reduced hours, gradually building up to a more typical situation as more facilities and activities open and availability improves. We'll be going ahead with hiring summer labor and recreation personnel to make some of the facilities available under the previously mentioned protocols. The other impact the town has felt in the accomplishment of some approved capital projects. Initially, we anticipate going ahead with our original slate of projects, but following recent discussions with our engineering consultants, the planned utility project will not proceed this year due to the availability of supplies to complete the project. Unfortunately, this project is the type where we cannot do part of the project this year and some next year. As a result, we will proceed with an expanded project next year, with a tender being prepared this fall and awarded to allow for construction in 2021. With this delay and review of other projects, we have looked at pool of upgrades originally scheduled for 2021 and are moving forward with all or parts of these modifications. This includes the leveling of the pool where it is sunk and other drainage issues. We'll also look at the cost of replacing the liner, see if it is feasible as well, although that would involve bringing workers from outside the territory, which might have an impact on its overall feasibility. As I mentioned, we are reviewing our fiscal budget for this year and the potential effects for the following 2 years. Overall, the administration has done a very good job at looking at our options while following the public health order. For all areas I've discussed, we will be following all WSCC and public health protocols and procedures outlined in the Emerging Wisely plan. Finally, in the next few days, we will be releasing a document to the public outlining our plans and clarifying a few things for the public. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd certainly answer them.
Questions out there?
No question, but just a comment. Thank you for the update, Grant, and thank you again to all the staff for all the hard work they've been doing and staying on top of all this stuff and trying to get things going again. So just a big thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. So if there's nothing further there, we can move on. I'm sorry, I can't see everybody now, so you'll just have to interrupt me if you do have your hand up. All right, so we do not have any bylaws tonight, so we can move on to the department head reports. I will read the motion first and then we can discuss the reports. So the recommendation is that Inuvik Town Council hereby adopts the following department reports as presented. 10.1, the Public Works and Services Report. 10.2, the Planning and Development Report. 10.3, the Community Services Report. 10.4, the Economic Development and Tourism Report. 10.5, the Protective Services Report. And 10.6, the SAO's Report. I'll need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Wood, second by Councillor Salaki. Any questions or comments on the reports? We can start with the Public Works and Services Report. I'm sorry, I can't see if hands are up. No. All right. On to the Planning and Development Report. Councillor Barlock.
I see that the Swedish Space Corporation is building a new satellite out at the satellite station facility. Or when is that expected to come in? Do we know?
They've taken the permit, and we're all sort of ready to go. The question now becomes, much of the workers and some of the work has to be done from some people from the US. So my latest is that they are working as if they can even go ahead with it at this point in time. Okay. But they have just taken out the permit at least.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything further on the Planning and Development Report? Seeing none. On to the Community Services Report. Economic Development and Tourism Report. Protective Services Report. None, and the SAO's report. All right, so I will call it to vote, but since I can't see everybody, I might just call out each person so that you can say yay or nay. Or should I just say, are there any nays? And that way we'll know that anyone who does not speak is a yay, if that works. I'm hearing nothing, seeing nothing. So we will call that passed. A unanimous decision. Thank you. Next up, we have information items, which I don't think there were many. Any? Nope. Any council concerns this evening? Council Wood.
Yes, first off, just let me say I appreciate the work, Grant, you've done on the site of the demolition of the row housing that was owned by Tile. I am getting calls about kids playing in that area, not frequently, but on occasion. Is there any way we can fence it off or do anything else to keep kids in particular out of there?
We might be able to take a look at fencing. I'm not 100% sure. Again, as to from a costing point of view and timing, we're hoping to get something back from ENR very quickly in the next few days to tell us what our next steps will be. So it may be a process of just getting the fences up and then having to take them down right away. But we'll check into it and see what we can do. The other thing is maybe a little bit more enhanced enforcement around there as well.
Okay, thanks, Grant. I realize cost is prohibitive in this case because of our budget situation, but I'd appreciate anything you can do.
Yep.
And I did like the reports you put out to the public, so thank you for that.
Thanks, Grant. Anything further under council concerns this evening? Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you. I have another concern, but just to speak to the concern brought up by Councillor Wood and what he's been hearing, there is some parental responsibility in all this too. It's not necessarily up to the town to be looking after everybody's kids. The parents need to take some responsibility to talk to them about staying out of there and explain the reasons why that is dangerous to their health. That being said, for Director Campbell, I noticed when the snow melted here in the old Davy Jones Arena area, again, where we removed those pilings that were coming up through the ground, there's a few more that are starting to come up now. There's one, at least, that I think is like 8 or 10 inches up, and there's a couple others that are lower to the ground. So not as bad as that other one was at this point. But again, if they continue to rise up, there's a lot of kids and people that skidoo through there. So it will become a danger at some point. But I think there's 3 that I noticed that have come up since last summer. And one of them, like I said, is about 8 or 10 inches. The other ones are a little bit lower down yet. So I just would mention that we should keep an eye on those as well, because at some point they'll become a danger to people transiting through that area on snowmobiles and stuff.
Rick, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, we'll get them looked after this summer. Not a problem.
Okay, thank you. Anything further under council concerns this evening?
Yeah, I have one here. It's Kurt.
Councilor Wayman?
It's a couple families living across from Happy Valley have brought it up that there's a lot of teenage drinking going on in Happy Valley Campground. Not only drinking, a lot of kids they're seeing being carried out of there by their other friends. And they asked me to bring it forward to council to see if we can approach the RCMP about that one, if they could patrol it more. And also our river park is nothing but a party park, and it's from morning till night. And I don't know. I know it's an ongoing concern. I don't know what we can do about it, but we tried. But we got to get. It's just a big party place down there.
Okay, thank you. I can reach out to RCMP. I have reached out once to them already about the river park, but I'll follow up as well.
So the Happy Valley, the mother was quite. she's pretty pissed off. She goes, there's a lot of young kids are going in there because they can't get in the gates and that, right? So something we have to look at if our youth are out there doing that.
Definitely.
And these are young. She's saying these are 12 and 13-year-old kids. This is not teenage, like 16, 17, 18-year-old kids. It's young.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll reach out to the RCMP. And Cindy, maybe we can ask MED if they can do their drive-bys a little bit, add it to their drive-by route kind of thing.
We should also reach out to GNWT because it's actually their park.
It's their park, yeah.
And now that it's open, hopefully that may help that situation a little bit, that there may be more presence in there, but it's if it's happening in the park itself, that's GNWT's park, and they should be made aware of it as well.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Salatki, you had your hand up.
This actually kind of piggybacks with what Councillor Wayman just said. There's also a spot out on Navy Road. There's quite a large pit where kids haul things in and burn and have parties. It had been requested by municipal enforcement last year to put up some sort of barricade, allowing enough space, I guess, for skidoos to get through. But the kids are driving in there and leaving things and then burning them, and it's a pretty big mess right now. And it keeps having to be cleared up. So if there's something can be done, Constable Hogan would know the exact location.
Thank you. You can also follow up. Councillor Wood.
Yeah, just a follow up to Councillor Salatki. If that's the pit I'm thinking of, isn't that the shared access with Todd Shetler and his gold mining venture?
No, it's a different location.
It is okay.
I think it's ops that is being talked about.
It's opposite on the other side, a little farther down.
Yeah, it's farther down on the right-hand side when you're heading to Tuck. It's ops. That's where the Army base used to be.
There's nothing further under council concerns. We do have in camera this evening, and I will be heading upstairs to chambers for that portion of the meeting. So I will I will get a motion to go in camera first, and then I will sign off and pop up upstairs. Moved by Councillor Salatki, seconded by Councillor McBride. All in favor?